Hi, everybody. Richard Morin here with AZ Central Sports, joined by Paul Skrbina of the Tennessean. Kind enough to join me and discuss Coyotes Predators, the playoff series that gets underway Sunday. Paul, how you doing?
Quarantine like everybody else, man. Just living the dream. How about you?
Doing pretty good, man. I can't lie, though. I am so excited to watch some competitive hockey on my television screen coming up here this weekend. A nonstop slate of games, but we're here to discuss Coyotes and Predators. These two teams are pretty evenly matched. They've had some fun and entertaining games between one another. But first and foremost, I want to know what's on your mind. What are you going to be watching for in this series from a Predators standpoint, from a competition standpoint? What's on your mind for this series?
From the Predators standpoint, I mean, they were starting to play better under their new coach, John Hines. Their goaltending, which is always an issue, always a topic in hockey, especially here. So, I mean, Pekka Rinne started 89 straight playoff games for the Predators. That streak is going to end one way or the other because there's going to be a back-to-back, and they're not going to play the same goalie, both of those games. But there's a lot of talk in Nashville about who might start game one, and John Hines said today that he's made that decision. He didn't share it with anybody. I think it should be UC Saros. I think nostalgia can be a seductive liar. Pekka's had a lot of success, helped him reach the Stanley Cup final. I think his time has come that, maybe it's UC's turn. And it's hard to base it on what happened toward the end of this season that was suspended too, right? Pekka has a history of strong starts, which could work in his favor after his layoff. But it's just like everything else in the world, man. It's like, who knows? And that's the fun of it, and that's what's going to be fun to watch, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Goaltending is going to be something to watch for pretty much every team. I can tell you from a Coyotes perspective, we're waiting to see, is Darcy Kuemper going to be the guy they're going to ride, or are they going to really play off that tandem mentality that's worked for them so well when both goaltenders are healthy with both Kuemper and Antti Raanta? When healthy and together, those two are some of the most effective goaltenders in a tandem setting that you can find anywhere in the NHL. And Rick Tocchet, kind of the same thing that Heinze did. I mean, he told, we know who we're going with for game one, but we don't really know who yet. The Coyotes have been a really good team in terms of goal prevention this season, but they've been exploited at times by teams with an aggressive and heavy forecheck, and that's something that Nashville does just about as well as anybody in the NHL. And I know for a fact that Rick Tocchet and the Coyotes coaching staff, that's been a huge focus of theirs during training camp and in practice. They've been trying to simulate that heavy forecheck that Nashville brings and trying to sort of adjust their system around it. I'm curious because I know everything that Rick Tocchet and the Coyotes have been preparing for to face Nashville. Has Nashville been preparing for what Arizona does? And if so, what are they preparing for?
Well, mostly I think it's funny you mention that because there's a lot of topic conversation during the practices we were able to attend about what the focus is on, and every day it seemed like the Predators said we're focusing on the Coyotes, but mostly focusing on themselves and trying to get their lines together because they've been they got the Jofa line now back together with Johansson and Arvidsson and Forsberg, which hadn't been together for most of this season. They've got their pairs. They're working on defensive pairings, of course. There's Yossi and Ellis and Ekholm and Fabro, and then the third pairing is kind of up in the air. So I think the answer to your question is mostly the Predators have been focusing on themselves. I'm sure they watched a lot of film and things we haven't been privy to, but on ice, a lot of specialty teams work because they've been terrible on specialty teams. So I think their focus has been more on them, and it's hard to with so much time to prepare for one opponent, which you never have, you can tend to overthink things too, right? And I think that's kind of the delicate balance that they're trying to stay on that line a little bit and not, because there's going to be if whoever wins, there's going to be another team that you have to prepare for.
Yeah,
you're not going to have nearly as much time, so you have to focus on yourself more, I think.
Who are some guys that, in your mind, are going to be counted on here? I can think from a Coyotes perspective. I mean, a lot of people out there might not even know the Coyotes' leading goal scorer is Connor Garland. You might not even know who that is, but he's the guy who's the Coyotes' leading goal scorer. It's not Taylor Hall. It's not Phil Kessel. It's not those guys. But those guys are the players who need to step up. You need Phil Kessel to become playoff Phil because he was quite simply just not very good for the Coyotes this year. And Taylor Hall was – I would say Taylor pulled his weight after the trade, but he could have done more. And then you're looking for, some of the highest paid guys. You're looking at Clayton Keller. He's 22 years old now. He's been in the league a few years. You need Clayton to catch fire and do something, and you need your captain, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, to assert himself like he can, especially running the power play. And like Paul saying with the Predators, the Coyotes, Not a great team on special teams this year. That's going to be something that needs to change. I just gave you some names of Coyotes guys that need to step up here in the postseason. Who are some Predators that, in your mind, got to pull their weight?
Well, I got to tell you, first, Ryan Johansson's been a guy who's struggled horribly this season. I mean, he's just had an awful season by every account. For whatever reason, this is a chance for him to assert himself. And I'll tell you this too, by the way. Taylor Hall's been a topic of conversation around here. Of course, John Hines coached him in New Jersey and knows him well. And he has been a name that has been mentioned, by some of the players, and by Hines is somebody that, maybe hasn't performed up to expectation, but certainly aware of the threat that he is, and a guy that they're preparing for. But Ryan Johansson, and to another degree, I mean, Matt Duchene has not had a great – he had a great start, a big free agent signing. They trade P.K. Subban basically to get Duchene. And Duchene hasn't provided the numbers that, are on his paycheck. I mean, it just doesn't match up. So I think those two guys, look, their defense is good. Defensively, the Predators are really good. I mean, Josi and Ellis has to be one of the best duos in the league. Yossi's a finalist for the Norris. Ellis is very underrated and elevates Yossi's game a lot.
So to wrap it up, I want to talk about, I guess, the implications of what happens in this first round for each team. I know from a Coyotes perspective that I would say if they lose the series to the Predators, this will be seen as a failed season. The Coyotes finished 4 points out of a playoff spot in the 2018-19 season. They go out, they add Phil Kessel, they add Taylor Hall midseason. They have their core locked up to a long-term deal. That absolutely should have been a slam dunk playoff team this year. And honestly, it would have taken a miracle for them to have gotten in had the season not been paused in March. So that's, I think, from a Coyotes perspective, you're looking at this team saying, if you can't get past that qualifying round, that's a failed season, given all of that context. I'm curious, for a team that, generally makes the postseason and has a presence, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, what are fans going to be saying if the Predators don't advance past the Coyotes, and what might they say if they do?
Well, I think I agree with you on the sentiment that, certainly from a Predators perspective, I think it's a complete failure. I think this season up to the stoppage was not a great success for the Predators. I think, they really ramped it up there toward the end to latch on to that last wild card spot, and who knows what would have happened if the season gone on. But they should be contending for the division title with this roster and everybody performing optimally. Under the circumstances, I think that's awesome. Just as an outside observer, it's and it's going to make for great stories either way.
Absolutely. So both teams, both Arizona and Nashville, a lot on the line. The qualifying round series opens on Sunday in the bubble city of Edmonton. Paul, thanks so much for joining us and doing this collab video. This was a ton of fun. For Paul Skrbina of the Tennessean, I am Richard Morin with the Arizona Republic. Enjoy that hockey.